I never thought I would be in this position, feeling both loved and uncertain all at once. I had married a man who had lost his first wife far too young, and though we built a life together, there were moments when I couldn't shake the feeling that something from his past still lingered. One evening, after a seemingly innocent conversation, he said something that shattered my heart. I couldn't help but wonder, if his late wife walked through the door right now, would I still matter to him? And if so, why did it feel like I didn't? My husband had been married before he met me, and his story with his late wife is a significant part of his past. She was very special to him. They met in high school when they were both young and unaware of how life would change them. They started dating in their junior year, and their love grew strong over the years, even through the challenges of long distance during college. After graduating, they decided to get married at the age of 23, right after finishing school. Their marriage began with so much hope and plans for the future. He often told me about how they had wonderful dreams of building a happy life together, traveling, advancing their careers, and eventually starting a family. However, everything changed in an instant. When she was only 26, an unexpected tragedy occurred. She passed away from an aneurysm, a situation the doctors later explained was completely unpredictable. Her death came so suddenly that he couldn't even prepare himself for it. It was a huge shock to my husband, and he struggled to believe that the person he loved most could be taken away so quickly. He told me that the days following her death were the hardest of his life. He felt like the world had fallen apart, and he didn't know how to keep living without her by his side. Even though he tried to move forward, he couldn't find joy in life. Those months felt like a long string of blurry moments without purpose. Life no longer had meaning without her. As time passed, he slowly accepted that he would need to learn how to live without her. But no matter what, the memory of her stayed in his heart, an irreplaceable part of his past. He would often tell me that she was the one with whom he had shared a large part of his life, and even though she was gone, she would always remain in his heart. He never asked me to understand his pain, but I could sense the loss he had gone through. He never expressed disappointment or blamed life for what had happened, but I knew that his life with his late wife was a significant part of who he had become today. About 4 years after my husband's first wife passed away, he and I met. At that time, I didn't think much about the possibility of getting married. In the past, I had experienced failed relationships and had often thought that I wasn't lucky in love. I met a lot of people, but no one really made me feel happy and secure. I once thought that maybe I would never find someone who was the right match for me. Then I met him. When we first met, I never imagined that he would be the one I would spend the rest of my life with. He wasn't the kind of person I thought I would fall in love with. He had deep emotional scars that I couldn't see immediately, but over time, I realized that he had a warm and gentle heart. He was very careful in his relationship with me, and I felt the respect he had for me, even though he still carried memories of his late wife that would never fade. We started dating, and I began to notice that he was caring, thoughtful, and trustworthy. But what surprised me the most was that he never pushed me into an uncomfortable situation regarding his past. Whenever I tried to ask about his late wife, he would answer gently but without too many details. He never avoided the subject, but he also never brought up painful memories. He just wanted me to understand that it was a part of his life, that he couldn't change, but he wanted to build a new future with. We continued our relationship and eventually we decided to get married. I vividly remember the feeling of happiness when he proposed. At the time, I was 31 and he was 34, and we decided to start a new chapter together, one that we would write as a team. After getting married, we had 2 children and our family life was filled with joy and laughter. He became a wonderful father, always making time for our children and loving them with all his heart. However, even though our life together was very happy, there were still moments when I could see him pause and gaze into the distance, and I felt like he was remembering her. During those times, I wasn't sure how to feel. I understood that losing a spouse was something that could never be easily overcome, and I never wanted him to forget his past. But I also hoped that we could create new memories, moments that belonged only to us, so I could truly feel that I was an important part of his life. It all started to change last night when we attended a potluck with friends. The evening began quite happily, with everyone chatting casually about work, memories, and various other topics. Everything was going smoothly until one of our friends, who had recently gone through a divorce, started sharing her painful experience. She had just ended her marriage, and people began chiming in about their past relationships. When it was my turn, I humorously shared that I never thought I would get married because I had never met a man who made me feel lucky or confident enough to commit for life until I met my husband. I said I felt very lucky to have found him. Everyone laughed and agreed, and the atmosphere in the room felt light and comfortable. But then, my husband began talking about his late wife. He spoke about her gently, nothing too out of the ordinary. But suddenly, in the middle of the conversation, he dropped a bombshell that changed the entire mood of the room. He said, "If she walked through that door right now, I'd pick up where we left off." Everything in the room seemed to freeze. I felt like someone had just thrown a heavy stone into my chest. My heart sank, and in that moment, it felt as if I ceased to exist in the space. His words were like a slap in the face, and while I tried to laugh it off, I knew that everyone could sense the tension that followed. I couldn't believe he said something like that in front of everyone, especially after everything we had been through. I tried my best not to let things escalate and kept my composure, even though inside, I was falling apart. His words made me feel like I was just a replacement in his life, that no matter how much I loved him, I would never take the place of his late wife. I understood that he still carried deep emotional scars from losing her, but I never imagined he would say something like that, especially in front of me, his wife. After the gathering, we drove home in silence. I couldn't speak to him, and the ride felt like an eternity. I was deeply hurt and didn't know how to talk to him about it. Why would he say something like that? If he still felt that way, was I just a placeholder in his life? I felt so confused about his feelings for me, and whether I truly mattered to him in the way he had once claimed. When we got home, I didn't say a word to him. We didn't talk, and I chose to sleep on the couch. He kept trying to make amends, but I just needed space to think. I knew I needed time to calm down before having a conversation with him, as I didn't want to say anything harsh that I might regret later. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that the hurt I was experiencing was something I couldn't just ignore. The next morning, I woke up late. I barely slept the entire night. While my husband was still asleep, I lay there, tossing and turning, thinking about what had happened the night before. The hurt was still very clear in my mind. Even though I tried to keep things from escalating the night before, his words kept echoing in my head. I couldn't stop wondering if I was just a replacement for his late wife. If he truly felt that way, then why did we even get married? And if we were married, did I really matter to him? I hadn't spoken to him the whole night. I knew I needed to calm down before facing him because I didn't want to say something I'd regret. He must have noticed the silence and tried repeatedly to make amends. I could sense the worry in his eyes every time he looked at me, but I couldn't make any decisions while my heart was still full of unanswered questions. When he woke up and saw me still silent, he came over to me. I could see the fatigue on his face, as if he hadn't slept all night. He spoke first, trying to start a conversation. "Are you still upset with me?" he asked, his voice full of concern. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I was thinking about her, and sometimes those emotions come flooding back." At that moment, I didn't know how to respond. Everything inside me felt tangled. I understood that he hadn't fully let go of the past. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in the shadow of something he couldn't get past. I stayed quiet for a few long seconds, feeling the tension in the air. Finally, I decided to speak, though my voice was weak. "You don't need to apologize for your feelings, but you can't say things like that in front of me, especially after everything we've built. I feel like I'm just a replacement. I need to know that I matter to you." He was quiet for a moment, then sat down next to me. "I don't think of you as a replacement," he said, his voice softening. "I love you. But I can't say that I've completely let go of those memories. I love you, and you may not understand the depth of the loss I've experienced, but you have to believe that I want to spend my future with you, not because you're a replacement, but because you're the one I want beside me." Though those words provided some relief, I still couldn't forget the pain I felt. I didn't know if we could get past this, but I knew that the hurt I felt at that moment couldn't be easily brushed aside. Our conversation didn't come to a clear resolution, but at least I could sense his sincerity. Still, the deep wounds in my heart hadn't healed. After our conversation that morning, I still felt like I was standing at a crossroads, unsure of where to go. Even though he had said kind and sincere words, the hurt I felt couldn't easily fade. I knew that he loved me, but could I really continue to live in the shadow of his late wife in his mind? Could we truly move past the pain of the past and move forward together? In the days that followed, I felt a subtle distance between us. Although family life carried on as usual, I could sense a shift in the way he looked at me, a distant gaze, as if he was still remembering the past. I tried not to let that affect us, but in those quiet moments, I couldn't help but wonder if he was truly ready to step into the future with me. One evening, while we were sitting around the dinner table with the kids, I felt a strange sense of loneliness. The children were laughing and chatting, but he and I felt like strangers in the same room. After dinner, I decided to open up once more, knowing that I would again face uncertainty. "Can you tell me again how you feel?" I asked, my voice soft but serious. "I need to understand more about what you're feeling because I don't want to feel like I'm living in a shadow you can't escape from." He paused for a moment and then looked into my eyes. "I know what you're feeling," he said. "I don't want you to think that I don't love you or that you're not important to me. It's just, I've never had to face the reality of loving someone else after she passed. It's really difficult. I want us to move forward, but sometimes those memories just come back." I felt a small sense of relief when he admitted his feelings, but at the same time, I realized that this wasn't something easy for him. He still wasn't ready to let go of everything, and I understood that I would have to learn to accept that, even if it made me feel incomplete. "Can you love me without forgetting her?" I asked, knowing it was a tough question. "I just need to know that I'm not a replacement, but an important part of your life." He took my hand and nodded. "You're the one I want, and I'll always love you, but I need time to deal with everything." His answer gave me some comfort, but deep down, I knew that we still had a lot to face. Our relationship had already overcome so many challenges, but whether we could truly overcome the shadow of the past was not an easy thing. Still, I decided to continue walking this journey with him, but I also knew I had to learn to protect my heart along the way.